You're listening to the Hunt Stealth Podcast with Ryan Uffens, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the wild. Whether you're an aspiring hunter or an adventurer seeking the untamed, together we'll explore the strategies and stories that lead to success in the great outdoors.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hunt Stealth Podcast. Excited to have Joe Eppele on the podcast with us today. Joe was a former professional athlete, played football in the CFL for the Toronto Argonauts. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
You nailed it.
Played college football for Washington State.
Yes, sir.
Kind of went through some transitions. We're going to get into that. Maybe for the folks that aren't familiar with you, and like full disclosure, I apologize for this in advance. Let me just say this. Joe is also the host of The Edge, a hunting series on Wild TV. I have seen some clips. I have not watched it, but I'm looking forward to starting to dig into that because it looks like you've got some fun stuff going on there. And you're a man of rather large stature. You're 6'8". Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. 6'8", or I guess 6'7.5", depending on how many heavy packouts I've done that month. But 6'8", roughly 270 to 280 is typically my walk around weight.
That gives me hope because I think sometimes like I'm too big to be out doing some of these big hunts. I thought I was a big guy. I'm 6'2", and I've lost some pounds as of late. When you get into the backcountry, it starts to change your condition levels, or you get exposed very quickly on what you can and cannot do, and where if you can get to where the animals are or not. So anyway, enough about me. Share the folks with some of the things that you're working on. Would love to hear. You're a father, husband. You've got a lot going on. Maybe just share the folks a little bit about what you're up to right now.
You betcha. So you mentioned I'm a father. I've got two wonderful sons. I got a 3-year-old by the name of Walker and a 2-month-old by the name of Wyatt, my beautiful wife, Kristen. So that's what keeps me busy and keeps me going. Day job wise, I'm the director of business development for Wild TV, which is Canada's largest hunt and fish and outdoor TV network. We also have Cowboy Channel Canada and RFD TV up here as well. So that's my day job. The fun part of my job, other than working with a bunch of great companies in a phenomenal industry, is I'm also the host of one of our network top shows called The Edge. I've been filming, this will be my 7th season filming with the show now. So we're filming The Edge season 16. I came on board for season 10. And it has taken me some amazing places and given me the opportunity to share some pretty cool experiences with everybody over the years. I grew up hunting and fishing in a small town here, coastal British Columbia, Squamish, which is just north of Vancouver. And grew up hunting, fishing. My old man was a welder. And we're a very blue collar family that spent our time out in the bush a lot. And my life took me down a path of athletics. Like you mentioned, I played some professional sports and competed quite aggressively in different sports. But ultimately, my true passion was always the outdoors. Funny story is I only pursued an athletic career because I was big enough for it. And I always said, like, my dream was to play football because the thought of having a career in the outdoor community was just so far out of touch and out of reality. But I grew up idolizing all the outdoorsmen and watching all the shows and everything when I was younger. So to be able to live out one dream and play an athletic career, a successful athletic career, and then retire from that, invest back in academics, and then pursue some career opportunities that kind of allowed me to, jump from that one kind of quote unquote dream career into my true passion as a career has been pretty fortunate. I'm certainly appreciative of the way life has taken me. So no complaints on my end. I guess that's my elevator introduction to myself.
I appreciate that. Like I said, I started following you, and some of the stuff that you're doing is pretty incredible. Let me ask you this, Joe. Like, how did your football career shape your mindset for like the physical preparations of hunting? And do you see any crossover like from the toughness that is required from both?
Funny story. I get asked that a lot, and everybody thinks that my athletic career created my passion or my opportunity to pursue the outdoors. But I'll be honest, growing up hunting and fishing with my dad, he was a stubborn German guy. And it was very much like, if you want to hunt with me, you better be able to hang in the mountains. So I think I owe a lot of my success in athletics to that grit, the responsibility, the dedication, and everything that the mountain hunting taught me growing up with my father as a hunter. So I think that created that kind of commitment that transitioned through my athletic career. And then ultimately it just continued to grow there. And then once I retired from athletics, it transitioned immediately right back into my my love for the outdoors and getting back into mountain hunting. I will say that the hunting I do now is far more aggressive than the hunting I did when I was younger. So it's certainly progressed in stages, but yeah, I mean, they both are very interconnected, but the honest truth is the hunting is what led to the athletic success more so than the athletic success leading to the hunting success, I think.
No, that makes sense. It's the reverse of what people probably assume from professional athletes, right? But I can see that. I mean, I grew up. I didn't grow up hunting. My family did not hunt. Like my mom, she's always said like no guns in the house, like over my dead body. And anyway, it was actually my son who got me into hunting. You know, he was 21 at the time, 20 at the time, and he's like, Dad, he's like, I want to start hunting. And I'm like, I have no idea what to do. And he's kind of like a gear junkie. Like he loves like the nicest stuff. And I'm like, well, like if you're going to do this, you're going to have to go buy the stuff yourself. Cause I mean, it's like a good way to lose money is to start hunting.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so he got into it, and then I reluctantly joined him in the outdoors, and I went out and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, I grew up skiing. I did a lot of skiing, spending time, you know, when I say skiing, not snow. It's weird. I live in Utah. I've never been on the mountain snow skiing or snowboarding my entire life. It like blows everybody's mind, but we grew up around the lakes, and when it would get cold, I would just wait for the lakes to warm up, and then we'd go back out and ski and wakeboard. And now it's like surfing is all the rage. But yeah, I coached my boy in baseball for years and years and years. I mean, I really enjoy walking around and seeing kids that are adults now and hearing coach yelled in the background. But I can totally see how like being tough in the outdoors, and like you said, going around with your dad, dragging you around, it probably teed you up pretty well for having a successful football career. When you transitioned, I mean, you went to work for Wild TV, and you didn't start right into like the hosting side of things, correct?
Right,
Or
right
did you?
after retiring. So after retiring from football, I had a few different careers. And then, yeah, no, when I applied, so my application process for Wild TV is I applied for basically an entry level sales position. Or there was an opportunity opening for it. And I kind of just got my name in there to see where it would lead, because I knew I wanted to transition. Like I didn't care if I was sweeping the back floors in an office of something that was with the outdoor community. I've always said you meet the best people through the outdoors, and I just knew I wanted to get back in that realm. So I kind of dolled up my resume. I just completed my master's and like my MBA in marketing and sales. And I applied for this small sales position, but I also included all my background with hunting, fishing, growing up in the communities, and then work I've done representing different companies through my athletic career and public speaking events. And it was a little bit of both at the same time, to be honest. They hired me for the sales job right away. They're like, yeah, you're obviously a shoo-in for this position. You're way overqualified. And it was just like a little part-time entry level, you know, dip your toes in kind of thing that I was going to be doing on the side. And then along with that, they asked me, they're like, you know, based on everything that you've listed off here, would you be interested in kind of, we'll do a test of you as a host, and we'll kind of film one episode. If it's trash, you're done. Like I was hired on as a
No
contractor.
pressure.
2 week, like, I don't even think there was a 2 week fire. It was like an immediate dismissal clause in there. Like, if we have you on here and we decide you're trash, like, revolving door, you're out as fast as you were in, kind of thing.
Wow.
And yeah, I just kind of leaped at the opportunity, and it was a complete blur. And here we are 7 years later. But it was a little bit of both at the same time. But because of the way the filming season worked out, I had some time in office through the sales stuff before the filming and production stuff kicked off. But and it was very small level, and it's grown drastically over the years.
What did you feel like that was a natural thing for you to be on camera? No.
Not even as a football player. So, like, when I was in track and field, I competed on the national team in track. I was a thrower. Nobody ever talks about the throwers. When it came to football, I was an O lineman. Nobody talks about the O lineman unless they screwed up, right? Like, you're never in the media. You're never getting the positive attention. And then, yeah, I mean, growing up, I was fat, knock-kneed. I was a very uncoordinated individual until I fell in love with the mountains. But I couldn't speak. If I was speaking to more than one person, I would stutter and slur and, like, very uncomfortable public speaking. So I've kind of worked through a lot of that over the years, but I thought I had championed a lot of it. And then you go out into something like hunting, where you're so immersed in what's going on, and you have somebody pointing a camera in your face, and there's this pressure to say something smart, act experienced, do all of this, and focus on the hunt as well. And it's a whole new ball game, complete new ball game in that situation.
Yeah, I can relate because, like I mentioned, I mean, my full-time gig, I work in media sales myself, and I can go sit and talk with anybody. But when I first started doing this 5 months ago, I hit record. I go back and listen to some of those first podcasts, and I'm going, man alive, just looking for filler words. You know, you're wanting to talk and sound smart, and more often than not, I go back, I'm like, what in the heck was I doing? What was I saying right there? But yeah, well, that's so. Since let me pivot here a little bit. This is a part where I'm sounding stupid right now. What's been the most, like, intense or craziest hunting experience that you've had since you started doing the show?
Oh boy, that's a long list. Oh,
Were there any close calls or, like, unexpected things that were, like, way out of the norm that happened that you can think of?
yeah, I mean, one day I was going back in. I had shot a bull elk the night before. We packed the majority of it out. I fell during the pack out. My headlamp died, so I was hiking out in the dark, and we were up a steep hillside, and it was all braided alders and rock slides and big boulders, and we're pushing down through the trees. And I was hiking, trying to catch glimpses of the headlamp in front of me and use a bit of the light from behind me. And I pushed through this thick patch of trees, but there was a perfect branch across my feet. And I kicked it with my foot, and I went headfirst into the darkness. No idea where I was going. I got a full backpack, 150 pounds of meat, and a rack and a head on me. And I, like, head first, who knows how far I went. Then I hit with my face, and it felt soft, but it was like burning hot and cold at the same time. Then my backpack hit me in the back of the head, and I continued to tumble down. And then I woke up in a pile, and my cameraman came down and found me, and I just looked at him. I was like, dude, my face is, like, hot, cold at the same time. I don't know. I can't see out of my one eye. I was like, just tell me how bad it is. Like, because I thought I was going to hit a boulder. And he looks at me, he's like, honestly, like, you got a split open eyebrow, you got some good cuts, but nothing aggressive, like no broken bones, nothing. It ended up being that my face hit a decomposing stump right next, like, all rocks. And then I hit one decomposing stump that kind of worked as a pillow to absorb my impact. So I knocked myself out a bit. We still had 1.5 kilometers or more as a crow flies and steep decline to get back to camp that night. So I took a front shoulder and a quarter section of ribs from my elk, and I climbed up a tree, and I hid it up a tree because we're in grizzly country, and marked it on my GPS for recovery the next day. And I kept as much as I could in my backpack, but I was certainly not in my best condition. I mean, I just got knocked loopy there a little bit.
It was 150 pounds, right?
It was, yeah. So I had a front shoulder, a quarter section of ribs. I had a full half back strap, a bunch of neck meat, and some other trimming meat on my backpack with my gear, with my rifle, and the head and rack on my back. So that's what came behind me and drilled my head into the ground. Um, as I'm also 280 pounds head first, that weight, with my head crushing a stump. Luckily, a stump. If it was a rock, I wouldn't be having this conversation today. And
Wow.
so that all happened. I climbed up, hid the meat, and we finished packing out that night. We got back to camp at about 6:30 or 7 the next morning. And we were feeling pretty rough. But when I woke up the next day, I was like, you know what? I'm lucid enough. I need to go back up and get the remainder of that elk meat before a bear pushes in on it. And on our way out, we had bumped a bear off the track. We didn't know grizz, black bear, what. We just saw eyes, heard some huffing, and it took off. Um, so I was heading back up the next day. And as I'm pushing in, I started finding some like roughed up, as I'm getting close to the pin on my GPS, it's thick brush. Everything looks different during the day. So I'm really relying on my GPS. And I'm getting closer and closer. And all of a sudden I hear some crunching, some crashing in the trees next to me. I'm like, oof, this is not good. Not good. And then I look down, there's some fresh bear scat, like fresh, like hasn't changed colors or anything. I'm like, this is definitely not good. But in my mind, I'm like, you know what, Joe, think positive. It's going to be a black bear. You have a bear tag, just pop it. If it comes out, that's fine. So take my rifle off my shoulder and I keep closing in. And all of a sudden I hear this chomping and huffing, and I can see the trees moving, and it comes in less than 20 yards, but stops. And it chomps at me for a bit and then goes away. So I'm like, all right. And I start yelling at it, throw some sticks its way. This is early in my experience with the show as well. So I'm a little, I guess I didn't have kids at home, so I was a little riskier. I'll put it that way. Less risk, and or less concerned about risk. So then I push
Sure.
in further, and this bear ends up bluff charging me again. Luckily, one point it bluff charged to 8 yards. I could see the fur and everything, and I ranged where it was at. Bluff charged to 8 yards. Never could see the full bear. And finally, I decided, you know what, I'm going to turn around and get out of here. It was chomping pretty aggressively, and I backed out. And when I went down to the base of the mountain, I looked back up, and it was next to an avalanche chute, and there was a like very dominant looking grizz stomping back and forth. So this grizz had clearly gone in and claimed my kill, or what was left of the meat I put up the tree, and that was probably the closest on two different levels where I came to having a really bad day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely changes. I mean, that's the one thing I keep wanting to go out and try and do some solo hunts, and my wife is not about it. I mean, my youngest is 18. I got a 25-year-old daughter. Got with the she's married, and we've got a granddaughter, and she's expecting another one here next month. And then I've got a son who helps with the podcast. He's 24. He's married. And then my youngest daughter is 18. But when I started this, still had some, I mean, kids at home, but they were older. But my wife is not about letting me go out solo trying to do anything. So it's nice that my son wants to do it with me, and then with Dustin, who you've had some communication with, and Quinn, we got some good buddies now that we're starting to go out with and have some fun. But I couldn't imagine being out there and like, I mean, grizzlies, like you said, like black bears, a lot of times, like they'll check you out. But grizzlies, I feel, at least from what I've read and from what I've talked to people, when they find you and they look at you, they're thinking, "Do I want to eat this or not?" And that would be unnerving, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 6'8", 280, so I like to, again, back then I had this bulletproof mentality. Nothing could mess me up. I had just split my face open, and I'm back in there, and I'm pushing in on a bear that I
Concussed,
basically,
probably.
that's probably half of why I did it. But that being said, I used to play professional sports, so I feel like I lived the majority of my life half concussed now. Uh, but yeah, I was pushing in. I was like, I'm somehow in my mind, I've got this bear that's just found a quarter of an elk or a good chunk of fresh meat, and I'm somehow going to push this thing off of the meat. Um, just stupid knowing what I know now. But I've had a lot of encounters with those, with bears, with different predators over the years, and just stupid situations. But I have definitely found that having kids has changed my mentality about that, because back then I thought, you know what, if this happens, my wife knows I'm doing what I love to do, and she's a good looking gal. She'll find another guy. Like I'm not going to hold back, right? But now
Yeah.
that I have kids, it's just that weight of not being there for experiences with your kids and doing all of that. So I didn't think it was going to change the way I hunted, or the way I looked at certain, if I'm approaching a goat or going up into sheep country. I used to go, I was never afraid of going the rougher route. Now I really take my time, and I'm like, is that the best route? Is there a better route up there? Um, I'm not shifting away from doing it. I'm just
Be a little bit
probably.
more precautious. When you're deep in the wild, you need fuel that won't quit. ReadyWise Pro Meals delivers over 30 grams of protein and over 500 calories per serving, keeping you strong for the hunt, the chase, and whatever the backcountry throws your way. From the protein-packed breakfast skillet to the bold Thai coconut cashew curry, these lightweight, freeze-dried meals are ready in minutes. Just add water and get back to the adventure. Made in the USA and built for hunters, explorers, and anyone who refuses to slow down. Get yours at ReadyWiseOutdoor.com and use promo code STEALTH for 10% off your next order.
I was never afraid of going the rougher route. Now I really take my time, and I'm like, is that the best route? Is there a better route up there? Um, I'm not shifting away from doing it. I'm just
Be a little
probably.
bit more precautious.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you look at the world that we live in today. I mean, kids need their fathers. I mean,
Oh God, yeah.
not discounting mothers, but I mean, especially boys. I think that now more than ever. I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into something completely shifted, but I just think about that. It's kids today, regardless, they need their mothers and their fathers around. And I can see, like, to your point, how it's like, hey, I'm not going to put myself in a situation. I'm still going to go after it, but I'm not going to, live on the edge.
Ooh. I like it.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
to me, the what pulls me in to keep doing it is yes, it takes time away from my family, and I put myself in risky situations, but that's where I find peace in a weird way. Like even I go when I film a hunt, and I have the film crew with us, and I come home, I feel the most at peace when I'm hunting alone in the mountains. That's just where I'm happy. I'll go on a hunt.
I call it mountain medicine,
It's the best
because
thing for the soul.
it is. You get
Undoubtedly.
out and you kind of become one with nature and the creator, and you kind of figure out how small you really are in the grand scheme of things.
And how small, or the real importance on a lot of stuff that in a day-to-day rat race really seems important, and then you're out there, and the stuff you miss is your family, your wife, kissing your kids goodnight, and just the general basics. And then all that other stuff that you get caught up on a daily basis isn't important. So, like, I feel like when I come back from a hunt, my priorities are in check. My values have never been stronger. Like, it makes me a better person, undoubtedly. But yeah, like, for me as a parent, I can't, or as for me to be my best as a parent, I should say, I couldn't completely remove hunting or these hunts from my life, because I don't think I would be as present or as aware of, like I said, everything just wouldn't be as in check for me if I don't get
Mm.
those periodic adventures. But then also, when it comes time to tell my children to chase their dreams and do their best and push past adversity and work around obstacles, if I haven't done that, how can I tell them to do it? If you're not actively doing it yourself, like, you can lead from example, and from experience, but to sit there and be like a backseat driver and tell them what they should do, but have never chased your own dreams. I just feel
Mhm.
like being out there and chasing it for yourself enables people to, or will enable me to be a better parent, hopefully down the road. Hopefully I don't screw it up too bad.
I think you're heading down the right track for sure. What you know, one of the things that I guess a question that I have is, because I had one of my daughters was very good at soccer. She had multiple scholarships. Washington State was even one of the schools that had offered her to go. She was an attacking mid. The girl could score. But since we're talking about kids and you've got, two young boys, I want your thought as a professional athlete. I think sometimes a lot of the coaches on the competitive level push kids into you need to pick a sport. Because she was very good at basketball as well. I mean, my kids get it from the wife's side of the family. I had to work really, really hard to be slightly like above average at sports, and my kids come naturally, and they have an incredible work ethic on top of it. But she had some coaches that just pushed her early on to pick one sport, and she went with soccer, and she had, like I said, multiple scholarships to go play, and she was just like, she's like, Dad, I'm burnt out. Even the high school coaches made it rough for her to want to go, and I'm like, well, sweetheart, Dad had already paid for your college with all these comp teams that you were playing on, and traveling and doing the things like that. I guess my question to you is there's two part. Are you going to encourage your boys to see? They're young, they have no idea, but are you going to encourage them to play football? Or are you going to try and steer them towards hunting? Or you just want them to be able to find something on their own that makes them happy?
Yeah, I can jump. I don't know if there was two parts after that, but will I push my sons towards football? I won't push them towards anything. Walker is the eldest right now. He's in skating and dance because he dances. Like, I put on music and he loves to shake his butt. So I was like, okay, you're going and dance. Like, I want him to keep him physically active and get him out of his comfort zone maybe, but pursue his own passions. Will I push them towards athletics? Absolutely. Only because I want them to be involved in something they can fail at. And that's the key. Is I don't care if it's competitive badminton, if it's like, you name it, if they can fail and, put their all into it and still come out short and learn from that, that's my only hope for them, because it'll teach them the most. So, I would love for them to find a passion in the outdoors. Walker's been out hunting with me since he's been less than 6 months old. Wyatt will be out this spring for spring bear with us, scouting and doing all of that as well. But when they're with us, I'm not focused on cutting a tag. Like, we can joke, throw rocks at animals if they're coming in. We go fishing. I try and do all the lighthearted stuff and just instill the fun side of the outdoors. I feel like there's, hopefully, if I don't do anything too stupid in the bush, I'll be around long enough to get to the serious side of hunting with them down the road. But right now is just, I pick my son up from daycare, and half the time when he gets in the truck, he wants to go on the boat to go crabbing, or he asks if we can go hunting. And I'm like, sure. When we go hunting, like, he's got one of those little elastic bows with the suction cup arrows. And I'm like, yeah. Let's go on the truck and go for a drive. Like, to me, I want them to love the outdoors. If they love hunting, great. But we go mushrooming. I grew up mushrooming, so my son loves mushrooming. It's like a Easter egg hunt every time you go. So as long as he loves the outdoors more than he loves his iPad, I'll be happy. And if he gets involved in a sport that he can fail at, have his heart broken, and learn that there's a need to constantly chase improvement, and you're not always going to get what you want, the rest is icing on the cake.
I think there's a lot of growth that youth can go through by experiencing failure. I played baseball. My career ended in high school. I showed up to tryouts. I was up finishing a test in high school, and the test took longer than expected. And so I run out, and coach is like, Uffens, go to first, pick it up, throw it to third. And I go fill the ball, come up, and I let one fly. I was just, hadn't stretched. It's that invincible thing, right? Like, I know I probably should have gone and thrown, like, coach, give me a minute to get my arm warm up, but just completely blew out my rotator cuff. Ball went flying out into the parking lot over at Viewmont High School. And I was like, what on earth was that? And he's like, take another one. And he hit it to me, and I fielded it, and I came up, and I couldn't even lift my arm above my shoulder. And not that I was good enough that I would have played professionally, but I definitely would have
Never
played in
know.
high school. But I've torn that rotator cuff 3 times now. And shoulder injuries, man, are rough. And I was just, talking to some other folks. I went on a vacation with my wife to Cancun, and my buddy's like, "Hey, let's go do the flow rider." I'm like, I'm pretty athletic. I can do that. Get out there. I'm going pretty well, and just eat it and come down and just completely, like, I hit it. And I was feeling, as soon as I hit the bottom, I'm like, where is like the compound fracture in my collarbone? I didn't have it, but it definitely was. I ended up going in like grade 2 shoulder separation, and my ADHD is running rampant now. So we can talk about injuries in a minute, but just I want to circle back and kind of put a pin in the sports side of things and the failure. Because and the reason I went to the injuries is because it's taught me resilience, the failure that I've gone through, and just the struggles. And it's like, okay, this sucks, but you can come back from this. And I think that is what's missing, because I watched fortunately we didn't have like everyone gets a trophy when I was growing up coaching and my kids were playing sports. Yeah. I watched my nieces and nephews come up, and it's like, oh, everyone gets an award. And that seems to be going away, but that's not real life. And I see it because I've been in management before too. These kids that were coming up that were dealing with that, they have no sense of discipline. They're not used to failure, and they just give up before they even give themselves a chance to be successful.
If you look historically at the best athletes, the best businessmen or businesswomen, anything, most of the stories start in defeat. That's what teaches you the best lesson, is learning that you're not, your parents can tell you you're good enough, but you have to learn at times you're not good enough. You have to ask that girl out. She shuts you down. Well, I'm going to go to the gym. You have to try out for a football team. You get cut. Well, I'm going to spend extra time at the track. You write an exam in school, you fail. Holy heck, I better pull up my bootstraps. Like, that's what teaches you the importance of hard work. If you succeed every time, and that's also, then when you get those wins, that's where your confidence comes from. That's where your pride comes from. So not only are you not, like, if you're given your victories your entire life, I really do think, even if you're at the top of your game, or perception wise, you're at the top of your game, you will lack in confidence and pride, because you know deep down on some level you did not earn it. So I think knowing that you had to earn stuff, regardless of what it is, going through those failures first and understanding that you were lacking, and then realizing that you can overcome those deficits through hard work, that applies through your entire life.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I touched on injuries a little bit, but I started hunting. This will be my 5th year that we're going out, and I have yet to have success. And people are like, what are you doing having a hunting podcast? And I'm like, I'm learning, man. I have learned so much from being able to speak with guys like you, and just the knowledge. And the cool thing I think about this community is people, I think, want to see other people succeed, but they also want them to put in like the work, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I get messages all the time, not to cut you off, but I get messages all the time. People saying, hey, can we go out hunting, or what do I need to get started, or what's the best way to do this? And I said, get out and fail. Like, get out and do it wrong. Get out and buy the wrong boots. Then you know what you want when you get the right boots. Like, wear the wrong backpack. Then you know what you're looking for in a backpack. Blow a few stalks, and then you go, well, maybe I should have done it this way. Like, I'm fortunate enough. It seems like I'm a good hunter because I get a lot of time in the field, but I screw up so much in the field. But they're all learning experiences. So next time you're like, well, hopefully I don't screw up as bad as last time. Let's try this again. And every now and then you screw up correctly, I guess, and it works out.
So, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's life's tough, and people can you see a lot of people give up and just quit on things. And it's like, had you just stuck with it a little bit longer, you would have seen success, and man, could it completely change your life. And I guess that's one thing that I would just encourage, like youth and even adults that are out there trying to do. If someone's listening to this, if there's something that you want to go do, you have a passion. If it's hunting, regardless what it is, like I'm a host of a hunting podcast. I've killed nothing. I mean, I've shot some pheasants, I've caught some fish, but when it comes to like the big game stuff, like I'm a nobody, and I'm okay with that because it's something that it's a passion that I've developed later in life. I mean, I sacrificed a lot of my time to be with my kids, and I fortunately get to go out and do, the hunting with my son, but it's totally worth just finding a passion and just going after it. Yeah.
Yeah. And stick with it. And yet you might not have killed anything yet or had a successful hunt yet, but how much more meaningful will it be to you now when you do succeed than if you had succeeded on your first trip out there? Like if you had just walked out there, first trip, slam dunk, 20 minutes from the truck, cut a tag, and then you're back at the house, it almost cheapens the experience. Where you're in a fortunate position where you've had to work so hard for it. I bet you after that first successful hunt, you're going to be chasing that high. Like you'll be hooked. It sounds like you're already hooked, but like I would give anything for that first success feeling again. Like it's great. And you still get that really good sense of accomplishment when everything comes together well, you're able to put the animal down quick, all of that. But that true first tag feeling, like you're in for a treat, and that's still ahead of you, man. That's pretty special.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. And it almost was, and I'm kind of grateful that it didn't turn out the way that it did, and I won't go into it because I only have like this one encounter with elk hunting. But it was I'll give you like the Cliff Notes version of it. I'm out with my boy and one of his friends, and they're down looking for this wallow that we had heard. We're up in some steep country, and I hear this bull elk coming in, not bugling, but just going through scrub oak, just snapping branches. And I turn around and I range him, and he's at 30 yards. I mean, and he's like a monster. Anyway, I only can see him from like the shoulder up, so I don't have a shot on vitals. I'm watching him walk forward, and anyway, I'm like, he's 3 feet from stepping into a clear opening, walking underneath this massive pine tree. Anyway, as per usual, you feel the wind hit the back of your neck, and we were going down a slope, and the wind was coming up. So, hey, we're going to go down this slope so we don't get busted. Anyway, he came in from behind 30 yards, and the wind hits back of the neck, and he was a monster. I'm like, there's no way this is going to be my first bull. I may have just hung it up right then. After that. Anyway, needless to say, the hunting gods were like, not today, son. And the wind hit the back of my neck. He bolted. And it was the last day of the archery hunt. And I just, from then on, I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, I want to be out chasing these type of experiences. So.
Good for you. That feeling. I feel like that's every hunter's worst nightmare. It's just that tickle on the back of your neck. Right. And it's always when like the hair's on end because like it's about to happen. You're like, I've waited for this moment. Here it goes. And it's not when they're 20 feet from the clearing. It's when they're 6 inches from the clearing.
Yeah.
That's when the wind's just like, and take that.
Watch this. So let me ask you this, Joe. Like, what is the biggest lesson hunting has taught you that you wish maybe more people understood, and maybe not just about hunting, but just about life?
Holy smokes. You're
sorry,
supposed to send me these questions.
Throwing bombs at you.
You're supposed to send me these before we start the podcast.
I'm sorry, man.
Biggest lesson in life that hunting has taught me. Geez, there are like a million answers. I could say just, that we are the smallest piece of the puzzle and that we should just be grateful to be here. Like that's the reality of it. When you're out in the mountains and you see a grizzly bear, you have those encounters, you realize how small you are. Yeah. How important it is just, enjoy the moment. Don't get caught up in all that other BS and
lose the ego.
Everything has consequences too. You know what? Like you can do everything absolutely right. On a hunt, on a stalk, like you mentioned, you can put yourself in the perfect position and stuff still doesn't work out all the time. So, every little decision, every action you make has consequences. Gosh, that is a heavy question. And I definitely did not do it justice, but
No, I think that's good. And I think we had touched on that a little bit earlier. And I apologize for kind of just like throwing that one on you.
no,
Um,
not at all.
but like, I think about like, it's like Cam Haynes, right? The guy is arguably the best bow hunter, like in my opinion, in the world. And if people have followed him, you've heard him talk about his friend Roy, right? And Roy lost his life out on a sheep hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that again, and Cam had said that Roy was the best hunter that he had ever, been with, and they were friends and they got started doing it together at a young age. And he's out on a sheep hunt, and like you had talked about, those sheep hunts, like you can be in some precarious positions, and it took his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, and I think this is where, for me anyway, it applies to all aspects of life, is you have to kind of lose your ego, because when you get out there in the wilderness, to your point, you start to you get humbled, and you see how
Oh,
small you really are, because a grizzly, or a mountain lion, or a mama moose does not care how many Instagram followers you have. It doesn't care if you have a TV show. It doesn't care if you're a professional athlete or if you're like the best salesman in the company that you work for. It can chew you up and spit you out if you're not ready.
it's the great equalizer. Doesn't matter how many millions you got at home or how many miles you ran before you went in the bush. It's all about what happens while you're out there, and that's what I love about it so much. I think is it really tests you and it forces you to look inward a lot. One of my favorite things when I was playing football used to be, those fourth quarter drives, those like when the game's on the line and you get to look at the guys in the huddle and look them in the eyes and you get to see what a guy's really made of. And sometimes you got a guy who's supposed to be this rock star who crumbles. And other times you have these guys that's like, man, why is he even wearing a jersey? He doesn't belong here. And you look in his eyes and you get goosebumps. You're like, "Whoo, this guy's a warrior." Like you get to see what people are really made of in crunch time. And I think being out on some of these hunts, when you're running on a calorie deficit, you're sleeping sometimes good, sometimes bad. You're in predator infested areas. You're missing your family. Like you break down, like you get to see people in the rawest form and you get to see what people are really made of. And for me personally, like I get a ton of growth by forcing myself to break down to that, but getting to see other people in those situations, I think that's why, a bond made in the backcountry, like through a tough hunt with somebody, that's a friend for life. Like,
Yeah.
man, like, and cause you're both on the same level, you're both in it, or all of you are in it together. And if you push through some of those like sketchy pack outs, you get weathered in for 2 days and you're like, man, are we going to make it out of this storm? Our tent feels like it's about to collapse on us. We're 35 miles as a crow flies from the road. Like, what are we going to do here? You have life talks you wouldn't have anywhere else. You look at each other, like you rely on each other in ways like for motivation, whatever it is. It really brings out the best in a lot of people. And sometimes you see people absolutely buckle. And I've had that happen too, where
Yeah.
we've had to hike out 2 days to get a camera guy to the nearest airport to ship them home because they just can't hang. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I would not want to be a I'm not a camera guy. My boy loves that side of things, and he's really been studying how to film and do some things, and he's gotten really good at just some of the little stuff that he started editing. So he wants to like capture some of the hunts that we're out and on. But I would not envy being a cameraman chasing a 6'8" dude around the mountain.
Especially not after 10 days when I take my boots off, I'll tell you that. Yeah,
Get out there with the big smelly guy.
yeah, you got to really love what you're doing. You got to really be passionate. Like a good camera guy loves it for the adventure, but also loves it for the art of filming the experience and
Right.
being able to tell that story. You can't be doing it for a paycheck. I don't think there's enough money in it if somebody's not passionate about it. Yeah, but if you can correctly capture those experiences and get to share that with people, especially people that aren't able to get out there and pursue that, and they get just a taste of that, what it feels like. that's pretty special too.
Well, that's kind of what had pulled me in. Like I said, my boy was the one that wanted to start doing it, and one of the first films that I watched was Donnie Vincent's "The Winds of Adak," and I think that Donnie does a really good job of like capturing like the essence of what hunting is, and it's about conservation. It's about taking, I'm to the point. It's like, dude, I will if I got like a spike tag, like I'll shoot a spike all day long. But I know once you kind of, I mean, just in talking to people, you kind of go through like, I just want to fill the freezer to I'm going to wait and try and get a little bit bigger bull or buck to like, I want to get a good mature animal.
It's Hunting can be really whatever you make of it, and I've never been one to tell people what they should chase. I mean, I grew up hunting spikes and spike fork deer, and that's what we did. We literally hunted for food, though. I mean, we mushroomed, we gardened, and we hunted and fished. That's what we did. But now I have enough time to be out there for prolonged periods of time. I can go out on a 10-day hunt, and if I don't cut a tag, I know I can go back out later in the year and hunt again. Because wild game meat I have 4 freezers, and they all end up full by the end of the season. And that's what we eat year round. I eat wild game 2 times a day, probably minimum. But I would never look down on somebody who's only got 4 days to hunt during the entire season, and they go out there and they cut a tag because holy heck, a spike walks out, and that's like if it's a legal animal, and that's what hunting is to you, and that's the opportunity you have. Who am I to tell you what you need to wait for? Now, if you have all that time and you have the opportunity, you should, like, yes, conservation wise, everything, hold out for the larger animals, do that type of thing. Certain, different species, absolutely, we should focus more on different age classes. But when it comes to that, type of thing, like the whole, late onset hunters go out and shoot a spike fork, and everybody jumps on them on some of these online forums. Like, give them no, come on. Everybody starts somewhere, right? So I think hunting should really be whatever somebody wants to make of it. And that's one of the special things about it is you really can, as long as you're following the regulations and you're not harvesting illegal animals, just get out there and have fun and experience the outdoors,
Yeah. A buddy of mine that we had on the podcast, Anthony Dorsey, he informed me that what I have is adult onset hunting. I'm an adult onset hunter. So yeah, I'm starting at it late in the game. And for me right now, yeah, that's the other thing. You got to have thick skin. It's like, that's the other thing too, is when you look at social media, you get a lot of keyboard warriors out there that just think they can say and do whatever they want to. I've been guilty of it myself. I'm trying to stay off X and leave the politics out of things, just because it really doesn't bring any joy or happiness. All it does is it makes you upset about things. And that's the nice thing about going out in the mountains. It's like, you're disconnected, man.
Uh-huh.
You get to go out there and come back with a blank slate. And I find myself more and more kind of pushing away from the political aspect of things, where it's either you think it's all good or it's all bad, and it's just life. Like, just go out there and work, and things are just, if you, again, to the point we talked about failure, if you just work and you have a strong work ethic, things will fall your way. It doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter who's senator. There are certain things, depending on your beliefs, that have like a major impact. But in the day-to-day of your life, I think more people across the world have more in common than they have differences. Anyway.
Oh, I mean, yeah. And there's enough people coming after our way of life that we don't need to attack each other in the hunting community. We've got enough people constantly trying to take away our access rights or our hunting rights, or shorten our seasons, or push us towards this, 3D printed meat stuff that everybody somehow says is healthy. But why do we need to break each other down in the community? If nothing else, like, somebody takes a different animal, like, if you want to cut somebody down for taking a smaller deer or whatever it is, well, then, unless you're willing to offer to take that person out next year and help them get a more mature animal, like, if that's part of their learning experience, unless you're like, hey, you know what, let me come out and help you next year and we'll find you a bigger, more mature animal. Why do you think you're right to cut them down there? That's my thought on it. So Yeah, I think as a community, we kind of need to stick together a little more and bring everybody
Lock arms
together.
and try and lift one another for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Joe, let me ask you this: like, where do you see the hunting industry headed, like in the next decade? Since we touched a little bit about that. I'm sorry, man. I told you like I had no agenda, and I got a couple things that as we're talking that I figured I'd throw at you.
Yeah. Like hunting industry, do you mean in terms of like media?
Well, so like what you with the media, just with you talk about with like the business development stuff, like with some of the brands that you're probably working with, and just like I mean, we touched a little bit on the community as a whole.
Yeah.
Maybe needing to come together. I think it's really pretty good. I think you get some guys out there that are just like maybe they weren't raised by a dad and they just need to treat people like crap and that makes them feel better. But I guess my question is more like, yeah, where do you see it going with media and just some of the brands that you work in? It's like this space, it's like how innovative can you get, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're starting to draw the lines with regards to advancements in technology, what can and can't be used. I think the hunting community as a whole is in for a pretty big fight over the next few years as we go down certain paths. There's certain groups that are really gaining momentum. And if we stay fragmented as a community, we're going to die by death of a thousand cuts, because a lot of people sit back and go, oh, you know what? Yes, they're coming after this hunt, but that's not the way I hunt. So I'm not being impacted by it. But each time there's a victory on that front, that group gains momentum. Other people side with them, and they're going to come after a new act. So I think there's a need to come together as a community. So that we're in for a lot of a fight. But I do think there's a lot of positive happening as well. I mean, I'm on the board with Wild Sheep Society BC. We're kind of elevating our youth programs there, really trying to do some more stuff and kind of foster that passion in the next generations on that front. I think it's like anything. I'm sure when I was a kid, there was maybe not to this extent, but there was a lot going on that we were blissfully ignorant to. And I just think there's this constant ebb and flow or fight for the rights.
Is there a major threat that you think that the hunting community should be watching out for? I mean, I know you say there's some certain groups, and like I know that the guys over at Meat Eater, I don't know them, but just through following them on social, like they do a good job of, at least here in the States, like, hey, here's what's going on, here's what you should be aware of, and here's how you can try and fight back. Like Trevor Thompson with PSC Outdoors, he's another guy. Like Utah just snuck a bill through that kind of hosed like the smaller guides and threw a bunch of fees at them. And that's a small one here, but just maybe, is there anything more as a whole that you think people
as a
should?
whole, not necessarily, unfortunately, which doesn't give us one big enemy, I think, which is part of the challenge
well, let's find it.
is everybody's getting hit from like 50 different directions. So in British Columbia, up here in Canada, we have our own fights. They're coming after certain accesses to areas or certain style. I mean, we've fought a few battles against cat hunting, or to preserve cat hunting, and a bunch of different access rights for different species. They're shortening seasons. The grizzly bear hunt, we lost a grizzly bear hunt, which had zero science backing to it. It was purely based on public perception, which was a huge flaw. And now we're dealing with the back end of that with overpopulation with grizzly bears in certain areas. But then Alberta, like each province, each state is facing their own issues. Whereas if it was just like the hunting community against the anti-hunting community, and there was
PETA, right?
Then it's like, okay, we all have a common enemy. This is great. But I think by attacking everybody from so many different angles, it's creating all these fragmented fights, and it's creating quite a few issues. And then also my biggest frustration is, as a hunting community, sometimes we pipe up because we get tagged, or we get lured into these conversations that kind of almost make us appear the way the media makes us look. And they bait us, and then they use it into these these quick headlines. And I've been guilty of it too. I'm not as careful as in the media as I should be at times, or you pipe up and then you go, man, I wish I could take that down, but they've already screenshot it. They've already posted it. Now you're the villain. So yeah, we could do a whole podcast on this subject right here. And my neck's
Yeah.
tightening up. Just like I swear my shoulders have come up an inch because I worry about it now more than ever because I have two young kids,
Yeah.
and I want my kids to have the right to be able to go in the mountains and have those moments that you and I talked about earlier. That I
Yeah.
was getting goosebumps. You probably got goosebumps. Like we were grinning ear to ear. I want my kids to be able to have those stories around a campfire. And the fear of losing that because we are too complacent scares I don't know if I can swear on here, but
You can swear.
it scares the shit out of me, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
just the fear of them not having that opportunity, should they choose to do it, is terrifying to me. So, yeah, as a community, we have a lot of fights, but we have a lot of positive stuff coming our way too.
I think so like I said, Trevor, who's become a good buddy of mine, he started sharing some things locally because we're both in Utah. He's like, hey, here's what to be aware of. And I had no idea because like I'm still just trying to figure out how to kill an animal. Like I haven't even thought about like the legislation side of things that start to happen. But I think for me, and having talked with him, the thing that I am starting to realize is you have people writing legislation and laws about hunting that don't hunt. And it's just you've got some lobbyist that's sitting in their ear that's getting money from some large organization that wants to, protect the whatever. I mean, yeah, like I said, I don't want to
They
turn this into a political podcast, but you know where I'm going. Like
they
they
draft
put
it up.
these.
They do a public perception poll and they go, wow, that might bump us X number of points. Let's push it through. And you can tell by the verbiage on some of this stuff when it comes through. Like up in Canada, we're facing huge issues with gun bans right now. And just the verbiage and the way it's all presented, you look at it and you're like, the people that are drafting this stuff have no idea what the heck they're doing. Like it's apparent. Um, but they're gaining votes in the areas that aren't exposed to the outdoors, like in those major city centers, things like that, because it looks good and sounds good on paper. And you can tell it's like, yeah, they wrote it because it sounds cool in a speech, not because
Well, yeah.
not because it makes sense.
Yeah, it's like here in the States, for the longest time with the Second Amendment, they're always like we don't want to take guns away from hunters. It's like, no, bullshit. You do. And it is what it is. And you, I'd have more respect for you if you just said that, like, you just want them gone entirely. But anyway, like I said, I'm
Again,
going to go down a rabbit hole, and we could go on for like another probably 2 hours just about that. And I know very little about it, but just what I've been introduced in. I think it's unfortunate that you do have people that are trying to make rules for hunters that aren't hunters themselves. So that's a huge frustrating thing that I'm starting to discover. But I would maybe just encourage, look, if you're somebody who loves to hunt, but it's not like your jam, like reach out to other hunters and try and figure out like what's going on, like what they're facing and what you need to be aware of that could potentially take your rights or your children's rights or your grandchildren's hunting rights away from them and limit access and their ability to go out and do something that we do that we absolutely love. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Joe, I want to be sensitive to your time. I do have a couple questions I just want to finish up with, if that's okay. Have you got a few more minutes?
Absolutely. I wouldn't expect any less at this point. I'm getting to know you quite a bit over this last hour here.
Sorry. I'm sorry, man. So, okay. So my question is like, what is like the one piece of gear that you don't go into the wilderness without? And what's the one piece of gear that you think is overrated?
Oh man. One piece of gear that I don't go into the wilderness without has nothing to do with its performance and function. I have a knife that was made for me by a good friend, and it has my father's ashes in the handle. So that comes with me everywhere I go. When I harvest an animal, it's the first cut. And yeah, I won't go down that road too much, but it's pretty important to me.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, and then oh, that was really loud. I don't know if that came through. And then aside from that, most overrated piece of gear. Oh man. Like, do I have a pass button?
Yeah,
I'm
well, I mean, I'll
yeah.
share you mine. I think one of the most overrated, and I can say it because I don't have any sponsors or anything like that that's wanting me to say something. I think it's camo. I think, in my opinion, understanding, and this is something that I've discovered. Like I said,
Mhm.
not personal experience, but just in having conversations with people that are super successful, like understanding the winds and having a wind indicator, because I think any of these big game animals, they're going to smell you way before they ever see you. So anyway,
No,
not to answer the question for you, but that's my personal opinion.
no, I think those are two great ones. I hunt in solids myself. For my style of hunting, I don't believe camo is necessary. Maybe certain styles like whitetail hunting and from a tree stand, or ground hunting turkey might be more pertinent. But I absolutely agree there. I think for me, and it's nothing to do with sponsor obligations or anything. I've over the years I've fine tuned my gear system so much that not only can I explain the purpose behind each piece, it's I can normally explain three purposes behind each piece of gear that comes in my backpack. So for me to kind of wrap my head around the least or the most over rated piece of gear, I don't tend to spend time looking at those pieces of equipment. So I'm really like I want to think of a really cool answer on that question. I just
It's all
do
good.
not know.
No, that's good. I do appreciate you sharing the fact that you take that knife with you, and I can tell that it's sensitive and holds a lot of meaning. So I appreciate your willingness to even open up about that.
Mhm.
Okay, Joe, last question. I promise you. Um, Dream hunt. If you only had one hunt left to do, what would it be?
One hunt left to be. I would really like, and it's funny because they're right here in our backyard. I really want to hunt a Roosevelt elk. I go and I glass them all the time, but it's just a draw tag that you have to get here, and the odds are really low. Roosevelt elk. I love blacktail hunting in the bush. It's absolutely miserable, soaking wet, thick, nasty, disgusting bush loaded with devil's club. Um, and it's a strong love hate relationship. But I get to chase blacktail every year. But I've always dreamed of chasing Roosevelt in that country. I go out, I glass them, I watch them, and one day I would really like to cut a tag on a Rosie for sure.
That's awesome. Joe, really appreciate your time. It's been great to get to know you. Folks, I'll post all the links for you to be able to follow Joe in the show notes. But on Instagram, it's Joe_Eppele. And then we'll put links to the Edge if you guys want to go check out his TV series. But man, I just can't thank you enough. You've been very generous with your time, and man, just appreciate it.
Ryan, I appreciate you for thinking about having me on here and having the conversation. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. I hope this is not the last time we connect.
It won't be the last time we talk, Joe. I'm sure of that. Appreciate your time, and everyone stay safe and God bless.